Welcome back to Corporate Crime and Chill, the podcast where we unpack greed, corruption, and the kind of innovation, air quotes, that makes you want to delete your 401k. Today, we're diving into Enron, the smartest guys in the room, a film that proves you don't need to rob a bank when you can just create one out of thin air, and that proves if you sound confident enough in a suit, Wall Street will listen to you. So let's start with the basics. Enron, the early 2000s energy giant mogul that claimed to have reinvented capitalism, but really just invented creative accounting. The documentary, directed by Alex Gibney, walks us through the whole circus, equal parts tragedy, comedy, and financial horror story. And what makes it so effective isn't just the story itself, but how it's told. See, Gibney doesn't just report Enron's crimes, he stages them. The film's narrative structure is slick, chronological, and painfully, obviously ironic. It starts like a success story, shiny offices, smiling executives, triumphant music. It feels almost aspirational, inspirational even, like an old computer commercial, something hopeful. Then, as the lies start to pile up, film's tone stagnates. By the time Jeff Skilling's asset-light empire starts crumbling, the glossy lighting gives way to grittier footage, courtroom gray, that lovely sterile fluorescent palette that screams federal indictment. The lighting choices are genius because they literally wash the humanity out of the space. Everything looks clean, corporate, and lifeless. It's the perfect metaphor for what Enron actually sold. Nothing. But basically just optimism. One of my favorite moments is the scene showing the California energy crisis. Traders are caught on tape laughing about shutting down power grids just to artificially inflate energy prices. Gibney overlays these recordings with chaotic images of darkened cities and a soundtrack that feels eerily upbeat, almost intentionally upbeat. The contrast makes the point brutally clear. Enron's executives saw suffering as just another market fluctuation. The editing and sound design turned their greed into a dark comedy routine. You almost want to laugh until you remember people actually died from exposure. The film's use of sound is especially sharp. The score constantly undercuts the seriousness of that story with jazz, ironic cues, like watching Ocean's 11. That's the brilliance of it. It mirrors Enron's own tone. The company sold charisma, charm, and nothing else until the whole act imploded in on itself. Then there's the interviews. Gibney's camera doesn't just record talking heads, it studies them. Close-ups of whistleblowers like Sharon Watkins are intimate, grounded in a soft, natural light that feels like a moral contrast to the rest of the film's sterile corporate gloss. Meanwhile, when we see archival footage of Skilling or Lehigh, they're framed like celebrities, confident, smiling, practically glowing under the studio lights. It's not subtle, but it's powerful. The visuals reinforce the moral hierarchy, who was being honest and who was selling nothing. It's like the film is saying, sure, Skilling looked like a genius, but only because the lighting at CNBC made him one. The setting also does a heavy lifting here. Enron's glass headquarters in Houston looks like a template to late 90s capitalism. Stereotypical, sleek, transparent, yet completely opaque in what it actually contained. That visual irony builds into Gibney's broader social critique. The idea that modern corporate culture loves the appearance of transparency, but not the accountability and responsibility that comes with it. And let's talk about the scene where Lehigh tells employees to keep buying Enron stock. Keep his employees to keep buying stock. The camera lingers on archival footage of cheering workers, confident that their CEO is telling the truth. Then, a dramatic cut to charts of plummeting stock value. The juxtaposition isn't just devastating, it's a cinematic manipulation. You feel the betrayal not because the film tells you, but because it shows you how easy it is to believe in something that shiny and grand and false. By the time the film ends, with executives in handcuffs and investors in ruins, Gibney has made his point. Enron wasn't an anomaly. It was an unfortunate template. It was a mirror held up to a system that rewards arrogance, punishes honesty, and calls it innovation. And that's the broader critique woven into every shot. Every piece of soundtrack irony, every cut between laughter and loss. The documentary isn't just saying, look how bad these guys were. It's saying, look how normal this was. Look how obviously great this was until it wasn't. So yeah, The Smartest Guys in the Room isn't just a film about financial fraud. It's about moral rot disguised as genius. It's about how capitalism's favorite buzzwords like visionary, risk taker, markets are just polite ways of saying nothing. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. Next week, we'll look at another feel-good story of human greed and downfall, this time involving a certain guy named Adam Newman in a company that sold office space as a lifestyle. Spoiler, it also doesn't end well.